Hello and welcome back to the Bitcoin Cash podcast, following Bitcoin Cash on its rise to global reserve currency. This is episode 13, which I've titled The Flippening Begins and Proof of Passion. And today is Tuesday, the 13th of April, 2021. I have a new mic and webcam set up, so hopefully that improves the quality of the audio and the video for everyone. I bought them on Amazon using purse.io, which I really recommend. Everybody can try that out, which is it's just a site, purse.io is the web address, and you go there and you can spend Bitcoin or Bitcoin Cash, and it will let you trade with people who have Amazon gift cards, right? So they want to turn their Amazon gift cards into Bitcoin Cash, and you want to turn your Bitcoin Cash into Amazon products. So it kind of links you up like that. But of course, because Bitcoin Cash is awesome and everybody wants it, you can get a discount. So you can set, okay, I'll pay, I'll get a 15% discount, which is what I think I got to trade my Bitcoin Cash for the Amazon gift cards. So yeah, I highly recommend that. It's a little bit strange to get your head around, but once you've submitted it and everything, and you get your delivery straight to your door from Amazon, obviously you can buy whatever you want and pay Bitcoin Cash. So that's super awesome, right? And today, no guest, unfortunately. I had a guest lined up, but he got ill. He fell sick at the last second, so that kind of put paid to that idea, unfortunately. But that's fine. I didn't want to take too long between episodes, and so instead I've decided that I'll try doing this as a live stream on my newer, better internet connection. So hopefully that all kind of goes well. Right, so let's get into the topic then. So, quick price update, obviously, as we always do. Bitcoin Cash today is $708.01, or a little bit higher, actually, just before I started this stream. And one BTC buys 88.6 Bitcoin Cash. So, actually, the ratio of BTC to BCH has declined quite significantly for BTC. In the last episode, which was a bit more than a week ago, one Bitcoin could buy 103 or 105 Bitcoin Cash, but now today it only buys 88.6. So BCH has made pretty substantial gains against Bitcoin for the first week, potentially since I started the podcast. To be honest, I think this might actually be the first week that Bitcoin Cash has increased in ratio against BTC, and definitely the first time that it's increased so substantially. So that's really good to see, and very interesting to note. This is despite Bitcoin being at all-time highs. It just currently hit a little over 62,000, even 63,000 earlier today, I think. So despite BTC being at all-time highs, Bitcoin Cash is still outperforming it. So that's pretty amazing. And then if we check in on the transaction count that we do every week as well too, no huge significant change there. BCH has still just been outperforming BTC pretty consistently. Hasn't been showing huge growth itself necessarily, but it is maintaining a pretty good daily volume in terms of the transactions that are flowing around the network. So that's always good to see. And the cent value in US dollars is going up. So even though the transactions are flat, obviously people are doing more, how would you say, more transactions, like more average value per transaction, right? So maybe bigger trades are being made on average. So obviously there are a lot of micro transactions and things going on Bitcoin Cash, but it only takes a few sizable trades to be in the mix, and it can significantly ramp up the amount of cent in USD per day, right? So today it was a little more than 10 billion in Bitcoin Cash cent, and it was about 38 billion or 30, I think, yeah, about 37 or 38 billion in BTC Bitcoin. So it is well over a quarter. And yesterday it was only slightly lower. It was only 9 billion in Bitcoin Cash, but in BTC it was only 19 billion. So it did literally 50% of the cent USD yesterday, and more than a quarter today. And that ratio is constantly improving on the BCH side. Like BTC has been trending upwards in terms of the cent USD, but because it has that cap, and because the more people that use it, the more expensive each transaction becomes, unless the price is also going up to increase the pool of funds available to be sent. On average, BCH can be outcompeting BTC either by the average size of the transactions getting bigger, or by the number of transactions getting bigger, whereas BTC is pretty much stuck on the number of transactions, so its only lever is the size of the transactions, which the price going up helps, but if the price starts going down, or as the fees just get worse and worse and worse and worse, it will obviously get worse for BTC. And you can see here that actually the BCH hitting 10 billion, that was the amount that BTC was roughly doing in November of 2020. And at the time, BCH was doing like sub 100 million. So it's now up to 10 billion. So perhaps the lag there is about 1, 2, 3, 4, about 4.5 months behind right now for BCH as compared to BTC. And as if we see that time frame shortening because BCH is growing faster, it will be very interesting to see, certainly by the end of this year, what is the ratio and the amount of commerce done on the two. But 25 to 50% of the daily cent USD had an 88 to 1 price ratio. I mean, that's still a pretty good signs for BCH, I would say. Okay, so right, so and this is sort of one factor, but not the only factor, in that the BTC dominance has been declining in terms of the overall cryptocurrency market share. So it's got it's right now it's at 54%, right? So if you add up the total market cap of Bitcoin BTC versus every single other crypto, BTC is only just a little bit more than half of the total market cap, which is pretty bad news for BTC, to be honest, because if you rewind back to 2013, 2014, or earlier especially, it was always expected to be over 90%, over 95%, right? It was really, really dominant in that way, and that's why all the innovation was in BTC, all of the community was aligned, everybody was building things, together. There was a big network effect. It was really powerful. But when the block size limits kind of kicked in, and the fees started going up in about 2017, start of 2017, which was before the fork in August of 2017, then Bitcoin value just plunged off a cliff, and it went from more than 85% down to it was only like 37 or 38%. And since then it's recovered a bit and it's come back up, and it has been back to more than 66%, still nowhere near its previous highs. The altcoins kind of grabbed that market share and didn't let go of a lot of it. But now BTC is definitely back on the downtrend. So once again, even though it is at all-time highs now at $63,000, it's still dipping towards being under 50% of the total coin market cap dominance. So BCH is gaining on BTC, and so are a lot of other coins. So for anybody who is involved in BTC, I would be just a little bit wary about that, because that's really not a good trend. Right, so the meme of the week, one of my favorite segments. We've got a bit of a complicated one here, but it's this comic that it's from. It's almost like a Gary Larson type comic. I don't know who actually drew this original image. It does look very Gary Larson, to be honest. He's one of my favorite comics, but for the audio listeners, it's a picture of the edge of a cliff, and on the edge of the cliff there's a plank of wood, and on one end of the plank of wood there's a whole crowd of people standing and listening, and the other edge of the plank of wood, which hangs out over the edge of the cliff, has a politician basically at a lectern. So the idea is that if all of the people who are on the cliff side, if that crowd of people, if they walk off the plank of wood, then the guy on the lectern, he doesn't have anything underneath him, and he'll just plummet down to his doom. And so he's saying, "We will print," which is a pretty typical politician type thing to say, as obviously we've seen with the US stimulus recently. Coronavirus stimulus is being announced, in the trillions of dollars, basically, by Joe Biden, but also all around the world, different currencies, different what do you call them? Different governments, different central banks are all sort of going mad with their printing. And then in this meme, all of the people who are in the group, they've got their signs: "Brr, more, hodl, brah, when Lambo," right? So this is sort of the typical thoughts in the Bitcoin community. And it says, "I've got Bitcoin on my Coinbase. I've got some crypto, but I've never used it," right? So they're all the crowd of Bitcoin supporters who are listening to this politician, even though they have the power to send him to his doom if they walk off the plank. And then the last element to the comic, really the crux of the joke, is that just one guy from this crowd of Bitcoin supporters listening to the politician has turned around and he's walking off the plank, like starting the trend, and it says, "Hey, look, peer-to-peer cash is still a thing," with the Bitcoin Cash logo, right? So it is kind of this idea that if everybody in the BTC community realizes and switches over and starts using Bitcoin Cash, or really any cryptocurrencies, then it will be really bad news for the politicians. But everybody does have, the power is with the people. They just have to act as a collective. And if that trend starts, well, it might be pretty hard to reverse, right? So, I mean, I've called this episode "The Flippening Begins" with a question mark. It's just my opinion, but I think we're at the bottom, basically. I think that the BCH hit the low of, it was about 110 to 1 versus BTC, and I think probably from here, on average, it should tend to appreciate. It will obviously be volatile, but I think BCH is really going to turn it around and start gaining on BTC, because it just seems like the narrative has changed, and this is happening at the same time as BTC is probably gaining against fiat currency, which are all being inflated away, and people are starting to clue into that. So why do I think this, right? It's because in large part, like, it's about narrative, right? That cryptocurrency, investing in any given currency, is mostly a matter of confidence or community sentiment, especially in cryptocurrency, more than the actual adoption, right? The actual adoption in the real world, or the number of users, doesn't need to change substantially in the short term for there to be a big kind of reevaluation. So any change in the narrative can make a big impact in the price. And I think we sort of saw the sort of first signs of that this week. Like, I have 5 links here to different Reddit posts that people made after the Kim.com debate, which I reviewed on the last episode. So if you haven't listened to that, you can go back and check that out. But basically, he talked about BTC versus BCH, and I think a lot of people that, the narrative is starting to fall apart a little bit for BTC, as we've seen the dominance has been dropping, and even though the forums have historically been censored and people have been banned for speaking out against BTC and advocating for Bitcoin Cash or for other alternatives that might have their merits. That hasn't mattered in the past so much. BTC has still been the king and still been on top, but all those chickens are coming home to roost in terms of the conversation is now mostly outside of those kind of censored forums, and the world is starting to realize that BTC seems like it has no plan really for scaling on chain at any point. The developers, everybody who was interested in doing anything different, they've all left. So it is literally just, hello, Sheech. Hello, welcome to the stream. Glad to have you. Feel free to ask a question. This is kind of the benefit of doing a live episode. I feel that we can get a bit of audience interaction going, maybe. Anyway, so Sheech asked, do you think BCH can one day replace BTC because of more people are going to use it instead of BTC? And the answer is absolutely, right. That's what I'll be going into today, and I've got previous episodes about that too. So yeah, BCH is gaining on BTC. The narrative is kind of falling apart that their fee problem is ever going to be fixed, or that they're ever going to have any good plans for scaling, or the developers have just been totally bought out by the banks effectively. So their only response to the world moving on has been to just ban everyone who disagrees. But that's obviously an unsustainable strategy because it doesn't fix any problems. It just sends the conversation somewhere else, right? So one thing that I didn't realize until just this week was that historically everybody says, well, BTC is like the reserve currency of cryptocurrencies, right? Because it is the biggest and because it has the most trading pairs, right? That if you have BTC, it's very easy to, if you have a cryptocurrency exchange anywhere in the world, it will trade their fiat currency for BTC. It might not trade it for Ethereum or for Bitcoin Cash or for any other cryptocurrency, but 100% they will have a dollar to BTC market. And then the same was also sort of true in the cryptocurrency markets, which is that the BTC would be the base pair that other things would trade against. So you would have BTC to Ethereum and BTC to BCH markets, but you wouldn't necessarily have BCH to Ethereum. So you could trade between BCH and Ethereum by swapping into Bitcoin and then back out, but you couldn't directly trade between those two alternative currencies. And the same thing with all the other hundreds of currencies, right? They would all trade against Bitcoin, and so the Bitcoin base pair, trading pair, would be sustaining a huge amount of the intermediate commerce. But what obviously, as BCH has had its as BTC rather has had its fees increasing, what I think is actually subtly happening under the hood is that people are starting to trade Bitcoin Cash as the base pair in the crypto to crypto transfer markets. So with regards to fiat currencies, with trading against the dollar or the euro or the yen, probably BTC will still be more popular. But in the realm of doing the BCH to BCH, crypto to crypto trades, BCH is going to be one half of that pair a lot more often than BTC is. I don't know whether that is happening today, but I think that's the way the trend is going in. And I clued into this idea because I looked at there's a lot of services that let you swap one crypto for another, and you can pick any trading pair you want. And I just happened to see that there was just Bitcoin Cash was very, very well represented, right? In those trades, there was a huge usage of Bitcoin Cash, more even than Bitcoin. A lot of people were trading Ethereum for Bitcoin Cash. They were trading Litecoin, Monero, like all these currencies. There's still obviously a lot of people using BTC, but BCH is rising in prominence, and this makes sense because in the crypto to crypto markets, the knowledge is very high, right? In the fiat to cryptocurrency markets, you have a lot of people who don't know very much about cryptocurrency. They're just learning about it for the first time, so they go with Bitcoin, which is the biggest, obviously, and the easiest to acquire. But in the crypto to crypto, it's completely different. Everybody already knows and understands about different cryptocurrencies. So what is actually important are low fees, fast transactions, and high reliability. And Bitcoin Cash has those features that BTC doesn't have, especially not anymore. So as a result, more and more trade is starting to shift onto BCH, and I think this is quite an unanalyzed type of phenomenon, and it's really one of the things that leads to what I was talking about before with the cent USD rising up so dramatically. There's a lot of different explanations for that, but I think this is one big driver that people have not really considered before, or certainly I haven't, which is that the crypto to crypto markets can be driving a lot of that there's a lot of trade going on in Bitcoin Cash, even if you don't see it in terms of people buying goods at a retail store. And that's obviously a huge market because people are doing crypto to crypto trades all the time when they want to speculate on a new cryptocurrency, or if they want to transfer between exchanges, or use cryptocurrency as a whole as a vehicle to get from one part of the world to another, right? A lot of the time that will involve one person on one end has one cryptocurrency, a person on the other end has a different one, and they sort of need to meet in the middle somehow. So that kind of crypto to crypto market is really positive that Bitcoin Cash is starting to grab control of that, really. So the main topic for today, then, in the spirit of this idea of is the flippening starting to happen, or why would Bitcoin be overtaken by Bitcoin Cash, is I thought I would give some perspective on why is Bitcoin Cash my favorite cryptocurrency, right? There's literally more than 8,000 cryptocurrencies listed on CoinMarketCap, and that's even before you go into the tokens and different things, ones that will be invented in the future, right? There will probably be thousands or millions more different kinds of coins and tradable assets, maybe billions or trillions, right? There'll be just tokens for absolutely everything under the sun. So why is it that Bitcoin Cash is unique? Why would Bitcoin Cash be able to outcompete these previous be able to outcompete the entire field and get to the top and defeat Bitcoin? So she asks, well, when most people are going to start using BCH instead of BTC, isn't it going to be more expensive and slower like BTC today? And the answer is no, basically, because the Bitcoin Cash community is prepared to scale on chain. And I mean, we have already seen, like we were talking about earlier, that BCH, Bitcoin Cash, is already today doing more transactions than BTC is, and yet the fees are still 1/10 of 1 cent. And there's no reason that would increase, because as the usage grows up, the Bitcoin Cash community, unlike the Bitcoin community, are willing to raise the block size and to scale in that way. They're putting a lot of effort, a lot of development into increasing the into that sort of scaling, like technical improvements in the node software implementations, so that it's not a problem to have those larger block sizes. And of course, and even if the price goes up, right? Because as the price goes up, you can just reduce the minimum fee. And I think they already have a plan for that. So at the moment, it's about one Satoshi per byte is the price in BCH. But if the price goes up 10x, so let's say right now it's about 700, if it goes to $7,000, instead of paying one Satoshi per byte, you can pay one Satoshi per 10 bytes. So the minimum floor of the transaction, cost, can decline relative to the increase in price, which is not something that BTC is willing to do. But in BCH, it's no problem, because the strategy is to have a lot of transactions paying a small fee rather than a few transactions paying a big fee. So yeah, in theory, there should be no problem. And it's not even theory anymore, as we've already seen. BCH has already done, is already doing more transactions than BTC, and far more efficiently in terms of the fee structure. So what makes Bitcoin Cash unique in that way, right? So why would it be the most resilient, or the most undervalued, and the most likely to last the test of time, right? So obviously there's a lot of metrics in cryptocurrency. So we've looked before at the cent in USD and the transactions, or different things. You can look at I don't know how many Twitter mentions there are of a particular coin, or you can look at how many physical merchants accept a coin, or you can look at how much development goes on, right? There's a lot of different things that you can look at the price, obviously, right? So there's a lot of different aspects that people can use in order to determine what is their favorite coin. But for me, it's Bitcoin Cash, and the reason is, we're going to need to do a bit of a detour, but the reason is to do with the passion in the community, right? So this is a bit of a long explanation, so we're going to have to start with the fundamentals, right? And that is that in nature, everybody knows peacocks, right? These, birds that have the huge, display of feathers, right? Very, very impractical, because if you are a peacock, it is very difficult to run away from a predator, and it's also makes you very, very high visibility to predators as well too. So I guess peacocks evolved in an environment where they didn't have too many of those predators. But evolutionary biologists have sort of looked at this phenomenon and tried to explain why would peacocks have this huge feather display, given that it's so essentially impractical, right? It is it takes a lot of energy for an animal to grow such a big, impressive display, but all it does is it makes it slower and more vulnerable to predators, right? So why would it have that? And the explanation basically is that if you are a peacock, having a very large and very impressive feather display proves to other peacocks that you are evolutionary, evolutionarily advantaged. Because if you're a peacock that is starving or is struggling in its environment, then you don't have a lot of spare energy to grow a huge feather tail display. But if you're a peacock that is already well adapted to its environment, or you're sort of the fittest, right, in a survival of the fittest kind of idea, then you do have a lot of energy to grow a huge feather display, right? That you don't have to dedicate your food energy consumption to staying alive. Instead, it can grow this big display, and so that is very efficient in terms of peacocks finding mates and having children, because it's very difficult to fake that. You can't, there's no other way for a peacock to have a lot of really cool feathers unless it has spent that energy, right? So another peacock can look at that and be very well assured that the peacock with all the feathers has, is surviving and doing well in its environment, because if it was having a tough time, it just would not have those feathers, right? There's no way around that. So why, this seems like a very weird tangent, right? But it explains the whole point of cryptocurrency mining, which is not something that people intuitively understand. So the way that in Bitcoin and in Bitcoin Cash, the mining process done, obviously famously, it burns a ton of electricity. So people who don't understand it or can criticize it and say, look, this is really bad for the environment. We're, wasting all this money on these huge server farms mining Bitcoin. Like, isn't that just destroying the planet and just a terrible idea? And the environmental impact is a different question. I'll have to, go over all the details of that in a different episode. But for the point of today, what proof of work is it's the same thing as the peacock growing the feathers, which is that when you are mining for Bitcoins, you're trying to solve an algorithm to produce a new block of transactions to submit to the network. But there's no way to fake that except to invest a lot of energy, right? That's the whole point of the algorithm. So what that means is, for the miners, because they are pouring all of their electricity, which costs them money, right? And electricity is not free. Because they're spending all that money to mine the Bitcoins, then that's what gives the Bitcoins value, because they've traded all of that investment of energy to receive the Bitcoin reward and the transaction fees when they produce a block. And this makes it very difficult to cheat the system, because if you want to run a mining rig and you want to destroy Bitcoin somehow, by maliciously taking over the network, well, it's going to cost you a lot of money. So you're going to be burning your own electricity in order to try and mess around the network. So just like the peacock, you've got your own energy at stake, really, right? So other miners can know that a miner who produces a block is most likely not attacking the network, because that miner has proven that they've spent a lot of their own energy in producing that block. So if they were trying to fraud the network, they would be going directly against their own interests. So that's kind of the whole system that ties Bitcoin mining together, and that's why you can be confident as a miner that other miners are not trying to cheat the system, and then that builds a consensus, even though any individual miner does not have to trust any other miner, or they can all be anonymous. They don't need to know who they are. They don't need to know where they are. They don't need to know anything. There doesn't need to be any discussion. The point is, if a miner has burned a lot of electricity and has proven that by the proof of work which they've submitted in their new block of transactions, then other miners can see, well, yes, you are invested in the system, because if there's no other way you could have got this block or produced this new set of transactions except by spending a lot of your own money, and you're not going to want to tank your own investment by trying to fake it somehow. So the key property is the same as those feathers on the peacock, where it's difficult and impossible to fake your investment in the system, and it's also very self-detrimental to cheat, right? So that's called proof of work in Bitcoin. So one alternative, right, is this other system for determining consensus in cryptocurrencies, which is called proof of stake. So the way that is done is that instead of burning electricity, which, as I said, a lot of people criticize based on the environmental impact, instead, the idea is how else could you show that you are invested in the system and you're not willing to cheat? And the way they solved it in this proof of stake algorithm is that you take a significant number of your coins. So like we can use Tron, I guess, as an example, is one example that has proof of stake. And you lock all your coins so that you can't spend them. Nobody else can spend them, but you can't spend them either. And then because you've done that, you can show to the network, let's say I don't know how much a Tron is worth, right? But let's say I had 1,000 Tron and I locked all this Tron, and then I produced a block and I said, look, if this block is valid and you accept it, well, then I will not be able to spend my Tron for another, I don't know how long they use, but let's say like 3 months. Then everybody else in the system can be fairly assured again that you're probably not trying to cheat, because if I was trying to cheat and destroy the value of all of the Tron, well, I would be destroying the value of my own 1,000 Tron that I had locked as part of that, as part of producing that new batch of transactions. So it's this idea that if you so in Bitcoin there's nothing like that, right? In Bitcoin there's no staking. You can't lock up your Bitcoins to prove that you're invested in the network in that way. Although it does sort of happen, because when you mine a new block of Bitcoins, you can't spend them immediately. There is a delay until you're allowed to spend them. So it does sort of happen in that way. But obviously, so some cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin or Bitcoin Cash or Litecoin or Dogecoin, they have a proof of work model where you're burning electricity to prove that you've spent resources and you're invested in the network. And then some have a proof of stake algorithm where you lock up your coins to try and prove that you're invested in the network. And Ethereum famously has been a proof of work network in the past, but they're trying to migrate to proof of stake. So, I mean, we'll have to wait and see. This is, a fairly unique case. There has not been any other cryptocurrency anywhere near as large. Like Ethereum is the second largest cryptocurrency that have tried to do this transition. So it will be very interesting to see how it plays out. But the problem sort of with proof of stake, obviously the benefit is maybe that it has less of an environmental impact. But the problem are that if you are rich in Ethereum, in like a Tron, for instance, in a proof of stake coin, then you can just lock up a huge amount of your coins to earn the transaction fees, and you can just do that forever, right? So there's like, it's like sort of the 1% of Tron holders can just stay the 1% forever, and the 99% would never be able to, redistribute wealth away from them, because the 1% holders are just constantly earning transaction fees, and they never have to expend any of their initial coin supply, which is not really the case in proof of work, because in a Bitcoin Cash system where everybody is making these miners, then somebody else can just make some new miners, even if they didn't have any miners to start with. There's not a finite supply of total mining machines, just more and more can always be made, or people can have newer or better ideas of making miners. But in proof of stake, if there's a limited supply of, one, like 10,000 Tron, let's say, and 9 people already each have 1,000, and they all are staking those coins, well, then nobody else can ever get to an amount of Tron that they could also stake 1,000 coins themselves. So it sort of locks people out of it in that way. And it's also a problem because if there is a digression in the network, if somebody does try to cheat, or there is some technical problem, for instance, and the network splits in two, well, on a proof of work system, the miners kind of have to vote with their own money on the line, because they're burning their own money in electricity fees. So they have to pick: do I want to mine side A or do I want to mine side B? or maybe they do a split, maybe they do 50-50 each way. But the point is they can't put 100% of their miners onto both chains. They have to divide them in some ratio and show that they support one side or the other side. But in proof of stake, if the network splits, then you can just stake on both chains. There's no cost to that. And so it doesn't really help to resolve disputes that effectively in the case that there is a split. And the entire point of these consensus algorithms is supposed to be to resolve, critical disputes, right? Because if when things are going well, you don't need any system. You don't need proof of work. You don't need proof of stake. If everybody could trust everybody and there was no disagreement, then you wouldn't need any of this stuff to begin with. The only reason that you need proof of work or proof of stake is in the case of a split. So it is quite important that proof of work, forces a hard choice in those disagreements, whereas proof of stake doesn't. So there's also just one quick thing I want to touch on as well, is there's also a bit of a joke in the cryptocurrency community about this thing called proof of social media. So for some coins where they do not have a strong mining network or a strong community or whatever, things end up getting decided based on just some certain key influences in the system, right? Like, a couple of people who are very well known, well, they can just make a Twitter post saying, I think we should use this type of algorithm, or I think this sort of is the direction the community should be going in, and everybody just follows it, right? It sort of overrules any of the mining network or any of the economic incentives or anything like that, right? So it's very important that you don't get into proof of social media. Like, I think proof of work is probably the best system that we've got so far, but some people like proof of stake. But definitely what you don't want to have is proof of social media. And at the time when Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash split into two, this was very contentious, right? Because there was a lot of censorship on the forums, and there was a lot of this proof of social media sort of appeal to authority rather than any other kind of logical arguments. So yeah, you want to avoid that. But this is all to say that the reason that I think Bitcoin Cash is my favorite cryptocurrency, and the reason I believe in it more than most other cryptocurrencies, is because of a concept which I'm coining. I don't think anybody has ever explained it this way before, but basically it's called proof of passion, which is that even if proof of work or proof of stake or proof of social media are ways of determining the direction of a particular cryptocurrency, ultimately cryptocurrencies are just a proxy for humans, right? If you have two people who are willing to trade a cryptocurrency, then it doesn't matter what system they use. It doesn't matter whether it's proof of work or proof of stake or whatever. If the two of them are both passionate enough about it that they will trade using that currency, it could be gold, it could be seashells, it could be Pokemon cards, it could be any cryptocurrency, whatever it is. If those two people care so much about that thing that they will willingly trade other goods and services for it, then that overrules everything. That overrules proof of work, overrules proof of stake, overrules proof of anything. So really, what you need in a cryptocurrency is you need very, very passionate believers. And historically, that's what Bitcoin had, right? That is what BTC before the fork had. That's why its dominance was more than 95%, was because all of the passionate, committed people were in that coin. And the effect of having a very passionate supporter in your currency is massive, because not only do they invest their time, and resources into buying that particular coin, but they bring other things too, right? They spread the cryptocurrency to others. They evangelize, or they build new software, or they think of new use cases for it, or they make some cool projects or whatever it is that is their particular talent or interest or energy. They will invest it into a currency that they are passionate about, and that operates on a sort of on an exponential distribution, right? So there's in a community, right, there might be the top 1% of people who dedicate their lives to a cryptocurrency, and their entire job, all they do is eat, think, and spread that cryptocurrency. And then there's a lot of, at the other end of the spectrum, there's 90% of investors who just found it on CoinMarketCap, and they just bought that currency and they just hold it, and they just hope somewhere or another that it goes it goes to the moon, right? But the success of that currency is not going to come from the 90% of people who just bought a little bit and hold it. It's going to come from the 1% of people that are really creating value in that community. And so this was an idea as well that sort of is related to a concept called Intolerant Minorities, which comes from Nassim Taleb, who's a well-known thinker of the Black Swan, was one of his famous concepts. But this is a different one called Intolerant Minorities. And the idea is that if you have, let's say, a group of 10 people and 9 of them speak German and 1 of them speaks English, but all of the German speakers speak a little bit of English, well, then the conversation that they have will be in English, because that one English speaker who doesn't speak any German, they can't possibly be involved in a German conversation, right? But to be inclusive, even if it's worse for those 9 German speakers because their German is better than their English, they will speak in English to accommodate that one person. Or for instance, if you have one like vegetarian in a family of 5 people, let's say, then most of the time, the family will eat a vegetarian meal because they don't really want to go out of their way to make a completely separate meal for 4 people and then a special meal for 1 person. They just make the meal that the 1 person can eat, and then that's what everybody eats, right? So really, if you just have a small group that will not sort of sway their beliefs, that are very inflexible, it then forces everybody else who is more flexible to kind of adjust to that, right? And so that's why proof of passion is so important, because if you have members in your cryptocurrency community who don't care about the price, or they don't care about people bashing them online, or they don't care about any sort of external things, they just care about the currency and they'll prioritize that above everything, well, that creates a very strong core to the currency around which other people can rally and then build a community. So Bitcoin originally had that, and after the split, to me, Bitcoin Cash has that. It is, I mean, some other currencies do as well. I'm not saying that no currency, other currency has passionate supporters. They definitely do, but I think Bitcoin Cash has by far the most dedicated, supporters. They have very high proof of passion. So let's think about what constitutes proof of passion, right? What is something that you can look for to see objective evidence in a cryptocurrency, right? So obviously 0 is if people just ignore a coin. if everybody just completely ignores a coin and nobody really supports it or does anything about it, that's obviously no proof of passion, right? But at the low end of the spectrum, in terms of small contributions of proof of passion, it's like social media posts. So I kind of talked about proof of social media. It's not bad for a coin if somebody starts a Twitter feed and starts explaining about their favorite cryptocurrency, but it's very easy to do, and it has a very low impact because in general, anybody can start a Twitter feed and just make some posts and everybody can just ignore it, right? Then there's also, genuine or once off, this sort of won't work, or it's a dead project or whatever, which is just like negative comments are just such low proof of passion, right? So if you think about fiat currencies versus cryptocurrencies have very high proof of passion because people will go out of their way to advertise and to build projects and do different things. Whereas nobody is doing that for the US dollar, right? US dollar or euros or have very low proof of passion. Yes, it's generally accepted in society, but people do not have forums where they're discussing, how great the euros is or how great the US dollar is, and they're not making different projects, or they're not trying to constantly spread it. Nobody is out there advocating the US dollar is the greatest thing ever. Everybody should use the US dollar. People don't do that, but they do that for cryptocurrencies, right? So any sort of haters gonna hate, like Taylor Swift. Taylor Swift will tell you that, right? Haters are gonna hate. So that's low proof of passion. You don't really need to be worried about that. And I think also in Bitcoin Cash we have this thing Flipstarter, which is great, and it's actually produced a lot of good. But one thing people should be wary of when they're investing in a Flipstarter, like a decentralized Kickstarter, is that it's very easy to create a Flipstarter page, right? So you really want to be assessing the people who are trying to get funding as to whether they've proven they have high proof of passion in other respects to back up their request for funding until you give it to them, right? So you should think about that. So yeah, low proof of passion is just general social media posts or general hate or whatever. Like in the long term, that just fades into the past. Nobody cares about that. Medium levels of proof of passion is investing money, basically. So when an investor buys a particular coin, they are signaling to the market that they care about that coin, right? Because they obviously wouldn't put money into it unless they thought it was a good investment, they thought it was going to last. That's a pretty strong vote of confidence. It's like we were talking about before with the God damn, I've lost my train of thought. Oh, this questions in the chat. I'm going to have to learn to adapt to that. But yeah, so if somebody buys a cryptocurrency, that's a very strong vote of confidence. Oh, and it's like burning electricity with the mining rigs, is that they can't fake it. Basically, it's very difficult. You only have so much money. So if you put it into a cryptocurrency, you can't be putting it into another cryptocurrency at the same time. Just like our miners, when they're burning electricity, they're either burning electricity on one cryptocurrency or on another one. Or when the peacock is growing its feathers, if it's spending that energy on growing those feathers, it's not spending it on staying alive, like finding food or anything. So investing money is a big game, right? But it's only a medium level of proof of passion because cryptocurrencies are very liquid. So it's very easy to acquire one cryptocurrency because you believe in it now. So it's worth more than posting about it on social media. It's more permanent than that. But on the other hand, it's still very easy to sell out of one cryptocurrency to another. So if the trend changes, if the tide moves from one cryptocurrency like Bitcoin and starts shifting towards Bitcoin Cash, well, there's very little to stop people who have Bitcoin now selling it and just buying Bitcoin Cash if they believe that things have changed. So maybe right now the price is higher, but there's no reason that can't change, and it can change in a very big tidal wave effectively because it's only medium levels of proof of passion. So what is high proof of passion? So this is what you want to be looking for when you look at evaluating a cryptocurrency project for its long-term prospects, right? So code that there's been written, writing code is not a fast process, right? For any sort of significant software, right? There's bugs, there's problems, you need to have people who know a lot about programming. So it takes, a lot of time and effort to learn to be good at that. And then you need to get it reviewed, and there's so many different processes in it, right? So it's very high effort to produce working software. That's what the whole tech industry is about, right? So in general, if a project has a lot of code being written, that is a very good indicator of high proof of passion, especially because cryptocurrencies are technical projects. So you do really need a lot of passionate developers. Then obviously you've also got any other kind of like businesses or projects that users can interact with. So code is obviously the most obvious example, but any other kind of business that people start in a cryptocurrency, whether they make a clone an existing type of business, but it's focused around a cryptocurrency. Like, for instance, there's this one now called OnlyCoins, which is a clone of OnlyFans, except it's made by some supporters of Bitcoin Cash, and so that's all integrated into the platform, right? But unlike putting cash on the line, or posting on social media, like, the amount of effort and energy and investment it takes by somebody to say, look, I'm going to do this whole business based around Bitcoin Cash, that shows so much more passion and dedication than just somebody who has just bought some and is holding it for the time being, or obviously then somebody who just posts once on social media saying, I think Bitcoin Cash is stupid. Like, between those two people, one person posts on Twitter and then is irrelevant the next day, but somebody who started a business, they're not going to give up on that very quickly, right? So merchant adoption and merchant onboarding is also very, very high proof of passion, because if somebody's running like a physical shop, or it could be an online shop, any kind of shop, and they're willing to accept a given cryptocurrency as payment for whatever they're selling, like, that shows that they believe in it, right? It also shows they think there's a market, that other people will be passionate about that and will spend their money with them. So it's very important to have a lot of merchant adoption. That speaks volumes, a lot more perhaps than like investing money, right? So the price of a coin can be very high, but nobody actually sells any real goods or services for that coin. And you can see that now. You can go on CoinMarketCap and you can look, there's hundreds of different currencies that are worth, tens of billions of dollars or hundreds of billions of dollars or whatever. But like, if you went to the supermarket, or even if you went to some online shop and tried to buy a t-shirt, even a cryptocurrency focused site, and you tried to buy something with that currency, they wouldn't accept it, or they just don't really care about it, right? So it's very, very easy, and you don't need very committed people involved to get a very high market cap, but you do need people who are very passionate and who are very bought into the currency to have them be accepting it for actual goods and services in merchant adoption. So that's why that's really, really important. And then also any other kind of artwork or projects or advocacy, like, in some ways you can think of this podcast, right? This is my proof of passion for Bitcoin Cash, that it takes a lot of time, right? I have to research the episodes, and get everything ready to stream it. I have to find guests, which they sometimes fall through, like today. But all these different things, right? It's not even just putting my money into the project in terms of maybe if I buy a little bit of Bitcoin Cash, but I'm actually trying to improve the entire ecosystem by investing in it. But other people have different ways of doing it, right? They make artwork, or they make explanatory videos on YouTube, or they, I don't know, whatever it is that they do. What you need to be doing is looking for cryptocurrency communities that have a lot of homegrown type of projects, because those things only come from people who are very, very committed to those projects and will make it succeed in the long run, right? And then the last one, which is very interesting, is that very high proof of passion includes having a lot of haters, basically. Having a lot of trolls and detractors of any given cryptocurrency is a great sign for that cryptocurrency, right? You might think, well, if everybody hates this currency, it's got a bad negative reputation, so I shouldn't buy it, it sounds stupid, or whatever. But if you think back to the early days of cryptocurrency, now the discussion has changed quite significantly, but maybe 5 years ago, right, or especially 10 years ago, everybody was on the hate bandwagon for Bitcoin. Everybody said it's not going to work, economists, this and that, it doesn't fit into our theories, it's a scam, it's a bubble, it's going to die, it's going to go away, blah, 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 blah. You had millions and millions of people. You still do today. I know people who still think cryptocurrency is going nowhere, and it's, they don't understand it, they don't get it, or whatever, and they will actively say it's never, ever going to take over, even after 12 years of cryptocurrency just spreading and succeeding. right? Yeah, we even have here Sheesh in the chat. I'll answer your question afterwards, by the way. But it says that's right. I'm in BCH, especially because the haters. That yeah, exactly. Because people, the opposite of love is not hate; it's indifference, right? If a currency is irrelevant, nobody even mentions it, and nobody goes to troll it or bash it or claim it's going to die or whatever. If something is being discussed, um, then it's obviously on people's minds. And for people who go online and are trolling away, then the um, the fact of the matter is that they are actually passionate about that currency after a certain sense, because if there's something about it that brings them back. Like if you want to troll online, you're basically trying to look and get a reaction out of people, but you can't do that if the currency doesn't have passionate supporters. So trolls are drawn to communities where there's a lot of passionate discussion, like there's a lot of merchant adoption, there's a lot of artwork and projects and new code and different things happening. In those scenarios, it's prime ground for a troll to come in, because they can say, "Oh, I think this, Bitcoin Cash is stupid and it's going to die," and people will write back to them. If they went to try and troll some community where nobody cared really, or they said, "Oh, I hate this currency," and everybody just ignored them, well, they would stop trolling there, right? So actually, if you have a lot of trolls and a lot of detractors, then that's a really, really good sign for your currency, because it means there's passionate people on both sides. There's a lot of passion. There's passionate people supporting it who are willing to advocate for it, and there's also trolls that are passionate about getting a rise out of people, and they're also flocking to that currency, right? So I mean, this is not unique to cryptocurrencies actually. So I really want to, this theory of mine does not just come like from nowhere. It's not unique to Bitcoin Cash or cryptocurrencies. So I've got some examples here from other industries or other phenomenon in the world. So businesses is the first category. So not so much now, but 10 years ago or 15 years ago, with Apple, it was famous because Steve Jobs was always very sort of controversial and forward thinking in his ideas, and he would put out products, and Apple fans would go absolutely nuts for them, even though Apple was the minority share at the time versus Microsoft or versus other products on the market. The Apple fans were so committed that they would advocate for, and they would go out of their way to buy Apple products, just basically regardless of anything else. They didn't really care if Microsoft computers were cheaper. They wanted Apple products because they thought they were better, and they thought it was just a better company and a better way of doing things. So they would, were well known for being in the minority, but being a very passionate, committed community. That's since faded off since the Steve Jobs, unfortunately passed away, right? The new leadership haven't been able to inspire anywhere near as much dedication to their products, and they're also much more mainstream now. They're not in that sort of minority position. But for a modern example, you can look at a company like Tesla, where yet again it's the same thing is happening. Is that Tesla doesn't spend money on marketing, basically, because its own community does the marketing for it. People who are passionate investors in Tesla, they will talk your ear off for days about how great electric vehicles are, and this sort of cult of personality around Elon Musk and everything like that, right? They just have a very strong, passionate, committed community, and that's how you know that there's something special going on there. Because if people wouldn't be doing that. People aren't this excited about Hyundai cars. Like they just aren't. I mean, sure, I'm sure some people like Hyundai cars, but nowhere near as many as absolutely love Tesla and will go out of their way to spread it, in any way they can. So businesses, are a good example of this sort of proof of passion concept. Then sports is another classic one that everybody knows. So I'm in the UK right now, so I've got a British football example with Arsenal. But the same is true of any of the major teams, basically, that they have these huge committed fan bases that will spread. They will advocate for their team. Like, it doesn't matter whether the team's winning or losing; they don't care. They're still there for that team, and they'll discuss it with other people, or they have fan forums, or all these different things. They wear the branding of that team, and they buy merchandise, and they drive ticket sales, right? They get their children into it. If we've always followed Arsenal, so then their children followed Arsenal. All of those things, right? It's very, very high proof of passion, and that's what makes those communities and those brands successful. Just like cryptocurrencies, you want to have that high level of commitment. Okay, so then you've got religion is another good one. So I have an example here, which is Sagrada Familia, which, if anybody has been to, it's this church that is in Barcelona. I've been there. It's absolutely amazing. It's very awe-inspiring, but it's this huge church, and it's not even finished yet. It's been being built for hundreds of years, right? But it's a Christian church, and when you go inside, there's loads of mosaic glass artwork and these huge soaring ceilings and stuff. You can't make a church or a structure like this without really, really being committed to it, and so that's an example of religion driving this same kind of passion and motivation and desire to produce great things, kind of at any cost, and that's just like cryptocurrencies, where people will build businesses, or they start community channels, or whatever it is that they do. And then finally, as a final example of proof of passion outside of cryptocurrencies, I've got social movements. So the one I thought of was the Vietnam War protests, which I don't know very much about that, to be honest. I'm not a real expert in American history or anything like that, but it's still very famous because there was just these huge outpourings by the public in terms of the music that was produced sort of in protest of the war, and the individuals that were protesting at different sites, and they made signs, and they and it created this whole political groundswell based off the passion and the commitment of those members of the community. It was very famous for that, and obviously that applies to any kind of social movements, right? So I mean, more recent example might be like Black Lives Matter, for instance, or the Trump supporters at the Capitol recently as well too. These things, it's just social movements or ideas that grips people so passionately that it's not about money, or it's not about trying to get rich quick or anything. Like, people will actually put themselves on the line to publicly advocate for and represent or spread an idea, and that kind of phenomenon is very, very powerful. So I like that. That's why Bitcoin Cash is my favorite cryptocurrency by far, because it has, in my mind, the highest proof of passion. It sort of has this reputation for being the scam Bitcoin, due to a lot of a lot of haters online on social media, or a lot of people who are invested in Bitcoin and don't understand the history between Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash, and how everybody how they came from the same source, and there's all these arguments about what is the real Bitcoin and what it's not, kind of thing. But Bitcoin Cash gets the most haters by far of any cryptocurrency. If you go online and read the read the comments, And from that, you can deduce like a couple of things, which is firstly that it's making a lot of noise relative to its size, because it's, I think, it's the number 12 or 13 currency or whatever at the moment, but it gets talked about way more than any of those ones that are higher than it, except for Bitcoin and maybe Ethereum, but it's still much more in the public eye. And that also tells you that the Bitcoin Cash community, they don't care. It doesn't matter that they are the most hated coin. They don't sort of bow to public pressure and say, oh, okay, maybe you're right, I should switch over to another currency, right? They don't do that. They stick with Bitcoin Cash because, come hell or high water, that's what they're here for. Like that's what I'm here for, peer-to-peer electronic cash. So it's also survived a minority fork in the chain split from BTC, and then also splits from Bitcoin Satoshi's vision and BCHA as well. So this is the only coin that I know of that has survived forks. Well, it's survived that many forks. I don't think most coins have even had 3 or 4 like forks. It just hasn't happened. But Bitcoin Cash has survived on both sides, where it's been in the minority and it's still had a strong vision and a strong drive. And then it's been in the majority, where some people have had a different idea and they've forked off and they've sort of been lost, or they've gone down their own path. But Bitcoin Cash has stayed to Bitcoin Cash, and the mission hasn't changed. And the community is still very strong in advocating for it. And that is unique among cryptocurrencies. So that's a very high proof of passion. There's more physical retailers than any other coin, like we talked about before. It's very important for a cryptocurrency to have actual places that you can spend it, and that doesn't come cheaply or easily. If for anybody who's tried to convince somebody to accept Bitcoin Cash, you know that in a lot of cases it is very difficult. So with physical retailers, if they're willing to accept that for their goods directly, that is such a sticky network effect that is so hard to replicate for any other currencies. But Bitcoin Cash is very focused on getting that merchant adoption and building those real commercial applications. So other coins are busy trying to release the newest tech or hype themselves up the most online, get the biggest pump going in their coin, or have the most technical, confusing thing, or whatever. But Bitcoin Cash, they're just like, look, let's just find real people doing real commerce and convince them to accept this currency. And that's something that takes a lot of passion to do, and a lot of passion to sustain. So that's another big indicator, I think. And finally, you can also see that in general, most cryptocurrency projects, especially now that there are so many different cryptocurrencies, they will tend to accept Bitcoin because it's the biggest, Ethereum because it's the second biggest, and Bitcoin Cash almost always is in there. If they're accepting, currencies, it will be in that order. It will be first Bitcoin, then second will be either Bitcoin Cash or Ethereum, third will be the other one of those two, and then maybe after that, maybe Litecoin, and then maybe like Dogecoin, or maybe, whatever other currencies that they like. But Bitcoin Cash consistently gets into that top 3 of currencies that they will accept, because they know that the Bitcoin Cash community is very passionate, and a lot of the people who run cryptocurrency businesses, they do come from that same history of being involved in Bitcoin and so on, and they understand the chain split, and they understand peer-to-peer electronic cash. They understand that vision, and so they do accept BCH. So I have here a couple of examples that have come up this week of proof of passion as well, which is pretty cool. So this comic was made by Oh Well Okay on Reddit, who it's called The King's Red Apples. It's this comic which is sort of an analogy for the BTC versus BCH debate, and whether or not you can trade the golden BTC apples, which are kind of unusable. You can't even eat them, for the green, Bitcoin Cash tasty apples, and then the red apples are the US dollars, right? that are filled with worms and are just terrible. But obviously, making a comment like this, it takes a lot of time. Like I'm sure the author here spent a lot of time on coming up with this comic and the concept and execute. It's very beautifully drawn and everything, and you just don't see too much of this kind of thing in other cryptocurrencies, right? In Litecoin, or even in Bitcoin, which is the biggest and has the highest price. You don't see innovation at the ground level with people. I just made a new Bitcoin comic. Like, you just don't see it as much, but you see it all the time in Bitcoin Cash, right? And that's where it is something special. And so then here's another example, which is pretty, sort of similar, along similar veins. It came up this week was the Reddit user Crazy Fool 01 drew this kind of awesome painting of a red-haired lady with her glasses, which are in the Bitcoin Cash logo, and at the top it says, "Wow, that's fast," and it's in a really cool art style and everything. I'm sure this took a long time to paint, and it came from a place of genuinely connecting with the Bitcoin Cash community. And it's just what I said before. You don't see other currencies having anywhere near as much of that artistic output or different I don't know, different passion projects, right? That's why it's proof of passion, because it comes from passionate people who do invest their passion into that currency. So the message there really for the community, I think, is if you want to make Bitcoin Cash a success, if you're drawn to it, and obviously everyone can be financially motivated, there's nothing wrong with that, but for building the community, really just be passionate about it, because that attracts other people in. They're drawn to that. People notice those things. I had it on a previous slide, actually. I didn't say it, but let me see. Yeah, here. So it's this kind of slogan that I've heard about in marketing or in entrepreneurial advice, which is that people don't notice that you're there, people notice that you're still there. And I think that's just such a fantastic saying. Like, you can think about any sort of products or any kind of concepts or anything. People don't get it the first time, right? I didn't get cryptocurrency the first time. Nobody does, right? They can't really just hear about it the first time and not be skeptical or have some objections or whatever. But as you encounter something over and over and over and over again, sooner or later you think, wait, I got to start looking into this, or you notice, like with companies or sports teams, it's the same thing. A different brand, if it just keeps coming up over and over and over, eventually you look into it. But how did it come up in the discussion or in your field of vision or in the world so many times? Was because people were passionate about it. So I think if we really want to make Bitcoin Cash stand out and become the largest cryptocurrency, the sort of the money aspect of it, right? The price and everything, the investment, that's all secondary. That follows the trend, which is the most proud and the most passionate community. So yeah, if you like Bitcoin Cash, think of a way you can get involved like that. It doesn't need to involve money. You don't need to be a millionaire investor or anything like that. You just need to think, well, what can I contribute to this community in my own way, and pitch in. So yeah, we'll just wrap up with, we had one question from the audience as well. Sheech again says, what do you think about PayPal in BCH? So this is sort of an interesting case, right? Because like 10 years ago, or let's say 5 years ago, it would have been a dream for PayPal to be getting involved in cryptocurrencies. And I think it's a good thing overall, in the sense that obviously cryptocurrency is constantly getting legitimized, and obviously the branding again is going to be out there in terms of Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash and Ethereum all being advertised on the PayPal website, and all the media articles that came up about it and so on and so forth. But it's a bit of a bait and switch because you actually can't deposit your cryptocurrency into your PayPal wallet, I don't think. Like if you just have the Bitcoin.com wallet on your phone, you can't just send in some Bitcoin Cash, and nor can you withdraw out of your Bitcoin Cash out of your PayPal account. So really, it's just a bit of a marketing gimmick, at least at this point, because people can have their cryptocurrency or they have like US dollars on PayPal, and then they sell it into Bitcoin or into Bitcoin Cash or whatever, and then if they spend it at a merchant, well, the merchant can't accept Bitcoin Cash. Like if you have a PayPal account and you're selling something on PayPal, you can't tick a box that says, when people pay me, send me the Bitcoin Cash, and giving them a wallet address. No, you just get paid in your fiat currency, right, in US dollars or whatever. So it's pretty fake, really. It's honestly just a way for PayPal to look like they're supporting cryptocurrency and everything, and maybe that will change in the future. Maybe there'll be enough demand that people, they will have to integrate it properly at some point. But obviously, if you can't withdraw it out onto the network and use it with other kind of Bitcoin Cash services, then it's only going to have a limited impact. And it is much better for BTC, this kind of thing, because the Bitcoin community, their cryptocurrency is not scaling it. Basically, it doesn't work as a cryptocurrency. So for them, if PayPal integrates it and it's really just a number that sits in your PayPal account that you feel great about, even though it's no different to having US dollars in your PayPal account, really, then that works perfectly fine for Bitcoin BTC. But for BCH, the philosophy is more that everybody should actually be participating in and using the network, that they should be able to send send money around on chain, and they should be able to get involved in all the different cool apps and services and things that are being built in Bitcoin Cash. So I think it definitely benefits BTC more than BCH. So do I know about MTO, the merchant token? No, I don't know about that. I'll have to look into that. But yeah, basically that's the end of the episode. So thank you for everybody. I've got 4 live viewers here, so shout out to all of them. Thanks for tuning in. I will obviously be uploading this onto YouTube as well, and releasing it on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, etc. The slides and all the resources are at bitcoincashpodcast.com for anybody that wants to check those out. Links to all the things that I mentioned. You can donate as per usual. As always, thank you very much to all the donators on the previous episodes. I will try and get a guest in next time. I know I said that last time, but yeah, it was just unfortunate that there was sudden illness which kind of prevented that. But maybe next time. And yeah, just go out and be passionate in the community. Really, yeah. Until next time.
He pulled out his laptop and bring up the site, looked at me and said, "This will change your whole life." Then he started explaining the basics to me. The miners make money by taking the fee every time a transaction is made and complete, and they work every minute and day of the week. A guy named Satoshi created this all. He's the mastermind of it, the brain and the balls. There's a lot more to say, but before I begin, just tell me right now if you're out or you're in.